everyone. Hi. Thanks so much for being here. I know we're running just about 3 minutes late, but I would like to let everybody find their seat first before we start. But yeah. Yeah. Okay. So hi everyone. My name is Valerie Mollet. I'm the program manager for the Ecofeminist Movement Building Fund in WECF, which is Women Engaged for a Common Future. Welcome to today's session. Our session is going to be, as you can see nicely with the title, An Ecofeminist Reality, from local solution to a global impact. Given the conversations we've been hearing throughout the day about the idea of a new world global order, and what's the space for local solution that is happening, and how can those local solutions translate to an impact at the global stage? That's a little bit of what we're going to explore. Our session is a little bit different than other sessions because you get to watch something. So in our session, we're going to show you a snippet of a documentary by the amazing Sarah Cook around the topic of ecofeminism and what's been done on the ground. And so, but before I jump in, I actually just wanted to say a little bit about WECF. So in case you don't know who we are, we're Women Engaged for a Common Future. We're a global ecofeminist network with about 250 plus women and civil society organizations globally working on environmental, biodiversity, human rights, gender equality all come together. So think of it more from an intersectional perspective when you mix, you think about all the crises, but you do it through a feminist lens. But specifically where we focus is on the ecological element and environment. So these are some of our focus areas. And for today, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about the documentary. We're going to watch it, about the snippet, and then we'll have a discussion with a panel discussion with our panelists, which I don't think you can see anytime soon. Yay, there. So our panelists would be Sarah Cook, who is the mind behind the documentary, and we also have Professor Tony Hastroff from Manchester University, who is looking at a post-colonial relation between international relation idea. So how do we globally relate to each other from a post-colonial perspective, and then the role of feminism within that. So we'll have a discussion there, and you met myself, and you will notice that I left Ernestine as Ernestine Lekeki as last, because she is actually the feature in the documentary that you are going to watch. And Ernestine was meant to be here with us today, but unfortunately, Fortress Europe did not allow her to get a visa. And I do think it is important for us to mention things like this in spaces like this, where we're going to talk about the impact of women, different activists that are trying, that are not waiting for the global order to change, and give them the space to speak up, the barriers that sometimes they face. But we do have videos that NRCs has sent us, so you still get to meet her alongside us. So I'm going to go back. And like I said in the beginning, today we've heard many times the new global order. What is that? And I guess the idea is that things have to change, or things are changing, or things should change. Relationship between nation states, the global community, that will become equal, that different actors will find space at the decision-making table, at initiating solutions that will be taken serious. All of that is the wish of this new global order. Are we there yet? I'll leave that to you to ponder on. Perhaps it will come in terms of a discussion. But today we want to present the work of a woman that didn't wait, that had to be innovative on finding a way to get the work that she believed was important from her community, so the impact coming from her community, and trying to bring it to the global level and have a certain impact. Without further ado, I'm going to let us watch, I think this is the best one. Yes, the documentary. And after the documentary, we'll have a little chat, and then we'll bring the panelists along. Nope, doesn't work. I knew this was going to happen. Bear with me.
My name is and I'm with Cameroon Gender and Environment Watch. I'm here to tell my story.
My name is Afrikadag. I'm the Executive Director of Women Engaged for Common Future, and we're an Ecofeminist network working in 50 countries with wonderful partners. Many of these partners also get invited the first time they come to speak to the member states and to donors to upscale their activities.
Et comment également s'assurer que leurs actions de lutte contre le changement climatique, de lutte contre les feux de forêt, de lutte contre la déforestation, soient renforcées, soient soutenues. Pour cela, nous avons invité Madame Ernestine Lekeki de Tanju.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, and thank you to France for providing space for us to share what we do with women in our area. Our interventions have reached out to 80,000 people, and 60% of them are women and girls. Through this farming, we train a community members, especially women, in forest production. The community members, especially women, they saw that the forest is important for them. They saw that the forest is valuable, and they fought against bushfire. Since 2017, our forest has registered 0 bushfire, thanks to the engagement of women.
I was born in New 1969. And our cooperative is Senangamo, which means ground cannot deceive you. That is the meaning of our book. When you bend down, when you walk as a woman, you cannot deceive you. Now that the rain is not coming the time we need, you see places are dry. There is no rain because of the environment, the climate change that has destroyed many things, and without the food will not be the way we are expecting. It's not easy.
Right now, in these our parts of the world, farmers are complaining, like they are confused, they don't know when the rains are coming and when they're going to be away. There are new diseases that are attacking the farms. And that's why we do agroforestry, agroecology, especially for farmers in forests and rural communities, so that we can help them to adapt to the changing climate. Hello. 1, 2, 3, go. Very good. I'm really on a good morning. And welcome again for our own house. I'm not introduce myself because when I know it all. Yes. And today we will start another journey. Will be very different. Yes, we have first identified that the first challenge is soil deterioration with chemical fertilizer. What other challenges will we see or will we notice when we use? The color of the soil changes. Wow. hear some insight. Okay. I like what you be observed. And I know that some of us they for will work for hospital and for maternity or for children's cancers. It means that all of us who have accepted that chemical fertilizer has a big problem in the soil, our crops, health-wise, is a problem. The problem comes back to us, the women, because in the night, when the child has diarrhea, our men are sleeping them. The mothers that we are up and we are trying to look for a solution. Yes, even when the man is having the problem, he is blaming you for cooking poorly. Yes, that is what we face here. So it means that these are problems that at the end of the day, they are coming back to us, the women. It's not enough to sit and be drowned in stress, anger, negativity because of that, but we have to now look for solutions out of these kind of problems. That is why we are bringing this activity.
Okay? Yeah.
So you're going on? I'm going to say yeah. Generally, Kanju is environment and gender. And under environment, there are so many aspects to address, especially for farmers in forest and rural communities, so that we can help them to adapt to the changing climate. And this is vital for life, not only in the forest community, but in Cameroon as a whole. Well, we are right here in 2022, and there were no businesses here. So they're going to see the route where we are going to go, and this is a transit route also to Nigeria. So most Nigerian goods are this way. Kanju first project was environmental education in 2008 in the forest community, where we realized that for us to really have empowered community members, we also need to invest a bit on education so that they can understand at least the basics. It's going alright. So parents should bring the drum and yes, the drum and the other things are there, and the cow drum. Yeah, you can start. Yeah, we will just introduce me and that's all. And I will not say much because I know you need to do the training in the local language for better understanding. Yes, yes. Working with farmers and building the capacity of organic liquid fertilizer, it is vital. Chemical fertilizers are expensive in our area, but our training brought a cost-free approach for the farmers. So they saw this as a need, a crucial need at this time. I believe in solidarity, like people always coming together and finding common solutions together. The hardest part of doing this work for us in Kanju is to deal with the multicultural context. We have women from various cultures, tribes here. I think that it is more about understanding your people and working on what motivates them.
Kanju nous a aidé à nous apprendre comment cultiver, comment passer pour vivre, surtout dans l'agriculture. Comme le petit, on a cultivé le soja dans le coopérative pendant le Koua. On nous a appris à élever l'élevage, non. On nous a appris à élever le lapin. On nous a appris à fabriquer le miel.
When we have a regenerated soil, it doesn't only help climate action, it helps conservation as a whole, humanity through livelihood as a whole. action is also being able to talk with our people, take recommendations and concerns from grassroots to the international community so that they can make better policies that will follow the bottom-top approach and that will be accepted and applicable right to the local context. So Kanju, this is climate action.
Well, so before we move on, I actually would like to hear from you. I think this snippet is like the first time it's being shown, this part of the documentary. So the documentary is large, big. Sarah will tell us about it. But this part, it's the first time that it's actually being screened. And I wonder if there's a word, there's something that's coming up for you watching this. What are some of the first thoughts? Anybody? Inspiring and motivating. Yes.
Community.
Community seems to be a big theme on how to bring the solution. I wish I had the microphone that far, but I'm going to ask you to stand up and be loud.
Coming up with, like I can see women coming up with solutions for their community.
Yes, women coming up with the solution, being actors and being part of creating what that world will look like rather than waiting for it to be done for them. I would like to invite Sarah on stage, if possible. And
You want me to sit anywhere in particular?
yeah, anywhere. There's 3 chairs. and I wonder if you can just tell us a little bit, because I think in this new global world, right? When the space is not given, you also have to be creative and innovative in how you bring about your message. And I'm just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about 100 Ways to Catch the Wind. Where did it come from? Why? And what's the journey been like so far?
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I hope you can hear me. Thanks for coming. I think it's a lot to come out on a Saturday to an event to be a learner, so I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate WECF for inviting me and the other panelists. I started making the idea for this film 10 years ago. I started my career as an environmental journalist, and when I first started as a student studying that, it was very focused on the environment and fixing nature. And as I worked as a journalist, I started seeing that humans were not as important in that discussion, and that was making me feel really frustrated. And so when I was switching to video making and to documentary, I wanted to refocus my studies on climate, and at the time I was kind of interested in this phrase like climate refugees. But as I learned more from nonprofits and different people around me, those people who were at kind of the forefront of experiencing climate impacts also had a lot to say and a lot to give. And another group that I really like partnering with, We Do, Women's Environment and Development Organization. They fund women to come and speak at the climate negotiations like that are happening right now in Belém. And I really wanted to just show what that's like in a basic way, for someone from a completely different place who is not used to speaking at the United Nations to show up and speak there. And that was kind of just like the basic idea of it, but then it's grown over the last 10 years to be more complex and intricate. And the core idea is really just showing people who are experiencing climate impacts first what ideas they're coming up, because their solutions matter, especially to their own communities. And these people are huge resources for us. For me, as a Westerner, thinking about building community is actually not easy. We've lost a lot of that in our society, in my society. And so to say Ernestine is a community builder, that's actually a really hard job. And it takes a ton of work and effort. And I just really respect what all the women in my film are doing. And but even though it's a hard job, it's something we all have access to. So I just really wanted to make a film that shows something that everyone can have access to, but learn from masters on how to do it.
Thank you so much. I think it really resonates to me, this idea of community builders for a topic so big as climate change, where sometimes individually we know that we cannot do it, and it can be daunting to even think about what I can do by myself. And it's true, in our society in the West, we may have lost a little bit of that, and perhaps it's also a good moment for us to all be inspired by possibility of what community building can do to support climate action within our the different continents and the different places. Thank you so much. So like I said in the beginning, I really wish Ernestine was sitting here, and I've had the privilege of talking to her so many times. I wish she could give you the message in person. But I would like to still give her a moment to tell you about her work, about some of the challenges that she faced doing the work, being a community builder, but also specifically claiming that the solution that people like her are putting on the table at the international, at the global forum is important to be considered. If I tell you that when you think about climate finance, less than 2% of climate finance actually go to women, grassroots women organization working on climate action. Women like Ernestine cannot even find themselves in that less than 2%. But yet again, they do spend their time to go into these conferences like COP to claim the importance of this space. So if you will allow me, I'll just let her speak a little bit about her work.
Cameroon Gender and Environment Watch is actively reshaping global structures of inequality. Canjus for challenges global inequality by empowering marginalized communities through climate advocacy, sustainable livelihood, and cooperative models that redistribute power and resources. Canjus participation in major climate conferences like the UN Climate Summit and the UN Sustainable Development Goals Climate Week in New York ensures that voices from rural Cameroon are heard on the global stage. By attending forums like the Kinshasa Regional Summit on Food Sovereignty and Biodiversity, Kanju aligns with movements that challenge extractive global system and promote community-led climate resilience. These platforms help highlight the disproportionate impact of climate change on communities that contribute least to global emissions but suffer the most, an issue central to climate justice. On economic freedom through cooperative models, Kanju promotes community-based cooperatives, especially in forest-dependent areas like the Kilom-Aging forest, where locals engage in beekeeping, agroforestry, and ecotourism. These models offer economic autonomy by reducing reliance on exploitative middlemen and global commodity chains. Cooperatives also foster gender equality, giving women leadership roles and income-generating opportunities to traditionally male-dominated sectors. On sustainable livelihoods and environmental stewardship, Kanju's work is in forest regeneration and biodiversity conservation, not only protect ecosystem, but also creates green jobs for youth and women. This approach challenges the global norms of development through deforestation and resource extraction, offering a regenerative alternative rooted in local knowledge. Redistributing power and knowledge is one of the areas where Kanju also promotes ecofeminism. By training communities in advocacy, environmental education, and entrepreneurship, Kanju shifts power from central institutions to grassroots actors. Their model exemplifies acting locally and thinking globally, disrupting top of decision making. There are key lessons Kamju learn from organizing women at community level that would inform border strategies. Kamju's grassroots work with women has revealed that empowering local female leadership, integrating traditional knowledge, and fostering economic resilience are essential for scaling ecofeminist and environmental justice movements across Africa. Empowering women through economic alternatives is one of the ways that one of the lessons that Kamju has learned that push Africa, especially ecofeminism, forward. Kamju has promoted sustainable livelihood like apiculture, agroforestry, and ecotourism. These not only reduce environmental degradation, but also give women financial independence, which strengthens their role in environmental decision making. Another key lesson is integrating indigenous knowledge. Women in forest communities hold deep ecological knowledge. Kamju has leveraged this by involving them in forest regeneration and biodiversity conservation, showing that traditional practices can complement scientific approaches. Third is the lesson on building leadership capacity. Kamju trains women in advocacy, environmental education, and organizational skill. This has enabled them to lead community initiatives and participate in policy dialogues, demonstrating that local leadership is vital for systematic change. We also learned the lesson on creating safe spaces for dialogue. By organizing women's forum and community meetings, Kamju fosters solidarity and collective action. These spaces allow women to share experiences of environmental injustice and strategize together, which is fundamental for movement building. Also, Kamju learned a lesson in linking gender and environmental justice. Kamju's work highlights how environmental degradation disproportionately affects women, especially in rural areas, and how addressing gender inequality is inseparable from ecological justice. There are also lessons on implications for regional and continental strategies, especially scaling grassroots models. Regional movements can replicate Kamju's integrated approach, combining economic empowerment, ecological restoration, and gender advocacy to rebuild resilience and ecofeminist networks. We also learned a lesson when it comes to policy inclusion of women's voices. Governments, non-governmental organizations, community-based organizations should ensure women's participation in environmental policy making, driving from Kamju's successes in elevating community voices. We also saw in our work that there is Pan-African solidarity. Kamju's engagement in continental forums like the Congo Basin Summit shows the power of cross-border collaboration. Ecofeminist movements should build alliances across countries to address shared challenges like climate change and biodiversity loss. Thank you for listening, and thank you again for this wonderful space at Afrikadag 2020.
Thank you so much. This was very important for us to really still allow her the possibility to bring this message, because for me anyway, personally, I also think when we talk about EU-AU relationship, we're talking about the European Union, African country and stuff. Sometimes in terms of lesson learned, we always think about it from one way to another. And perhaps part of this new way of thinking of or relating to each other is actually to see what's working in other continents. Like, I think about the difficulties that we in Europe are also facing in terms of responding to climate action. Perhaps community-led solutions are models that we can start to embed. So perhaps now it's actually a lesson that we are learning from places like Cameroon to implement in the Netherlands, if we want. And to talk about this new relationship, because I think Ernestine also talked about the Pan-Africanism, like all of this connection, like the solidarity, the change of mindset. I would like to invite Professor Tony Harstrop from Manchester University to help us understand this new vision that we, or new, or a vision that has been in the building for a long time, given her work in post-colonial international relation. What is the space for these movement, ecofeminist movement? Do we have any hope that it's going to find its place? What can we do? Also, not just actors like Ernestine, but each one of us also in this room. What can we do to really make it happen? Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Valerie, and welcome, everyone. Thank you, WECF, for bringing me here today. It's actually very difficult to follow on from Ernestine, actually, because I think she's sort of put into practice some of the ways in which I think feminists' knowledge can change the world. So over the last decade or so, I've been working with theorizing around feminist decolonial perspectives, and in particular Pan-Africanist feminists, in a context where this is mostly influenced because there's been a space for thinking our world through feminist means. But nevertheless, it's sort of a feminism that I felt had reinforced existing power hierarchies, and I think Ernestine does a really good job of articulating what some of those might be. But a sort of feminist decolonial vision of the world is one that has to be rooted in sustaining life, in repairing historical and ongoing harm, and one that has to be people-centered. And I say that as someone who studies and researches global organizations, global institutions like the European Union and the African Union. And in a sense, this sort of feminist other worlds requires us to sort of think about the core systems of oppression. And when I talk about them, it'll be very obvious to see the ways in which the climate becomes really important. You know, some of the militarism is, to my mind, one of the biggest sources of harms on the planet today. It's also, the military is also one of the biggest polluters on the planet today. And increasingly, even when we, for example, in Africa, very much critique military coup d'etat as we should, the understanding of security as we have it today in Europe, for example, in North America, for example, is one that is very much rooted in militarism, rooted in spending more, not just on the military, but also investing in military technology, so much so that our economic model, which is problematic anyway, the neoliberal economic model is problematic, is now very much linked to militarism. It's also, when we also think about different systems that underpin this ongoing hierarchies, and where sort of feminists, at least African feminists, have tended to critique increased capital accumulation. In one of the earlier panels, we talked about debt and debt financing. And just to put it in practical terms, most of us here are quite familiar with what the World Bank is and what the IMF is. You might also know that the majority shareholders of the IMF and the World Bank are global North countries or global minority countries. And so if they wanted to cancel debt, they can very easily. But these are also the countries that hold the reserve currency. So to what extent can working within the system as it happens now, even when we're thinking about reforms, actually change anything? And my argument would be that, you know, if you look at some of the work that folks like Ernestine are doing, and she's not alone, if you look across the continent, there are lots and lots of feminist women's rights movements that have obviously different and varying degrees of influence. And they are able to sort of infiltrate and provide alternatives to sort of prevailing norms. A few years ago, we had in Nigeria, there were campaigns against ongoing police brutality. And one of the things that was really fascinating about that is that it was a movement that was, of course, very much a youth movement. It was a movement that had a lot of support. But one of the things I found fascinating about that was that it was the feminists that brought the alternatives. And they were asking, I think, very critical questions. On the one hand, there was a lot of argument for why we should have more human rights. If we only had more human rights, and then the police would be better. If the police had better training, then they would be better. And one of the questions I was asking, and luckily some feminist colleagues in Nigeria were also asking the same question, was, okay, but who have been the arbiters of human rights all along? Who's been doing the training of police for more than 60 years post-decolonization? These are the same countries that are being challenged within their own local contexts for police brutality, simply because for them, Black bodies are disposable. So would simply training police to be better, quote unquote, actually solve the problem? Or is the problem not actually challenging the casserole understanding of what justice is and what justice could be? So I think that a feminist decolonial vision is one that doesn't just present alternatives to what is already there, but one that sort of seeks to disrupt the sort of fundamental basis of the world as we know it now. And what I think African feminists have been able to bring to the table, and I think that this is really important. Feminism is not new. Most of us here are very familiar with what feminism is or could be. But at the same time, and I think in my own reflection, it can be quite easy, even amongst those people who are well-meaning, to sort of reproduce some of the same hierarchies that have enabled these harms to occur. So one of the things that African feminists tend to call for is sort of, simply making space for African feminist knowledge. That, Africa is not sort of simply a space to provide you a case study for why X, Y, Z should be done in global politics, which is what you tend to find, but that there is knowledge in that occurs in Africa, that theorizing already happens in Africa, and that we should actually create space to make that heard. And I think this here where we are is a perfect example of actually allowing that to happen, to allow for the primacy of African feminist knowledge. Because, of course, the other thing you hear is, well, maybe they're not ready for it. Maybe feminism is a foreign import. But clearly, that is definitely not the case. But I think at the same time, and this is more of my sort of dilemma with a lot of the conversations that are currently going on with respect to development and, what exactly is development. Personally, I do not like the language of development, and much of what you see and much of the asks that is being made with respect to development should actually be thought of in terms of reparations, really. And I think that while we talk about some of that language on the edge of things, and I do not think reparations is just about money, but it's a start. If you sort of think about, I read somewhere the other day that in the United States alone, if the descendants of enslaved people try to reclaim even the minuscule of the financial reparations they're owed, this would signal over $1 trillion. Think of who else has $1 trillion just given to them recently, but I'll not say much. But I guess I wanted to conclude on the point that has already been made, I think, by Sarah, by Ernestine, and indeed by why it is that we're here, that we do need to take climate crisis seriously. without a planet, there's really nothing to secure. We cannot have a people-centered anything without an actual planet. And I think, in a sense, the existential nature of the climate crisis puts into sharp relief the different ways in which these different systems of oppression come together. So Europe wants to solve the migration problem, but it doesn't want to deal with the fact that it is also one of the highest polluters. It doesn't want to deal with the fact that countries are still in debt and therefore cannot adapt as quickly because of precisely policies that are being made. And I think that this is an area that, at least in my experience of doing research with a range of both grassroots and sort of meso-level feminist organizations, there is a clear consensus that this is a climate crisis, but it's also a crisis that is rooted in coloniality, and it has to be seen as such. That this isn't something that, we all know it's not something we're contributing to equally, but that's besides the point. But we have a context where the harms that are still being perpetrated is being done in the very context of these global inequalities. And I'll stop there for now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lenny. And thank you for contextualizing the crisis even more and saying that let's not forget what contributed in creating these crises. And if we want to forget, then we'll forget it also in the solution. And we ought to think about that. We've been speaking a lot, especially me. I feel like I've been speaking all this time. So I am going to open up the floor on if you guys have questions that you would like to ask our panelists. But I would like to reserve about 5 minutes towards the end where we'll switch it around, where I will ask you questions also, something to ponder about before you leave. So yeah, without further ado, if there's any question for any of our panelists. Yes, I'll come to you. If you can introduce yourself and then tell us which panelists you're asking the question.
Okay, my name is Sarah de Wit. I'm from the University of Leiden, together with my fellow colleague Joanna and some students. So great to have you here. Thanks for the beautiful documentary. I look forward to watching it and for your great speeches. The question is for Ernestine, who's not here. So maybe you can answer it or somebody else. What can Ernestine's project or her voice at the COP really change at the global level?
Yes, I'll take that. And is there any other questions before? Yes?
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for all the input given. I'm Yasmin. Yes, so I have the question. It can be answered by both of you, but maybe more you since you're a professor. And I really got goosebumps when you talked about the idea that, yeah, Africa, the African continent is not just the case studies, that there is deep indigenous knowledge. And I was wondering, and this comes maybe also from my own frustration, how do you see here the dialogue in Europe being less extractive, especially when we look at the ecofeminist, methodologies that we should embody more, not just like as a buzzword, but really, to create some kind of paradigm shift within the conversation.
Thank you. Before I sit down. Yes.
My question is around the decolonization of police force systems in Africa. In the context of Kenya, for example, I think ours was established during the British colonial times. What would you advise? Would you advise that these systems are taken down and we build them from scratch? Or would you advise that we integrate whatever we think works for us into what is already existing?
Right. On the question of COP and what sort of impact people like Ernestine have at these conferences, I'm actually going to turn to you, Sarah, because you've been to many COPs and you filmed quite a few Ernestines of the world. And tell us a little bit, what do you think is the impact of their presence at COP? And of course, I will add more.
Yes, the footage you saw of Ernestine was at COP28. I missed her last year, and then I was supposed to be on a plane with her tomorrow to COP30, so we're still hoping she can come to this COP. I think that something that's really been impressive to me, or has been impressed upon me by attending to almost 3 COPs, is the work on the ground that they do together versus the multilateral argument negotiation space. The actual negotiation space is very hard to access, is really just for government officials. And sometimes they get to speak to government officials through panels like you saw this one. And so they can make an impact through that, through being on these panels, having short moments of time where they kind of have to learn how to tell their story in 2 or 3 minutes, which is what WECF tries to help them do to make the most impact. But I think that what I've heard most people say is that the reason that they keep going is the networking and the building of solidarity with the other women like themselves. Ernestine is a leader in her community, but when she's at COP, she's amongst peers, you know, so she's kind of like this pillar in her community, and when she's at COP, she's amongst other pillars, so she can learn and exchange information with those people and in those spaces. And then I'd say WCF and We Do and other groups like that are kind of trying to work to make it so that it's not an annual event, but like a just something that happens every month or every quarter where they go and they meet more regularly. So I hope that answers the question.
And maybe I can add a little bit more. COP conferences like COP look cumbersome at times, and the presence of civil society, grassroots organization, given the difficulty to enter negotiation rooms and stuff, can feel a little out of place or too far. But I can tell you, for someone that have been attending COPs for quite a long time, if grassroots organization like Ernestine did not show up, the conversation will also be different. It's the simplest idea of you cannot ignore something that is right in front of you. That's also super important in shaping the agenda. If you look at the agenda of COP, it's not perfect. Oh God, I wish it would be better, because we've been at it for quite a long time, like 29 now and stuff. But if we're not there, then the conversation also completely goes aside. And it's evidence-based also. You cannot tell me that you can't put money for grassroots feminist organization if I can show you a couple of grassroots feminist organizations work that is working. You can't ignore that. And for me, that's the importance of why women like Ernestine show up at this conversation. Not to be forgotten, but also to just be that pain in decision makers' faces. We had a question on indigenous knowledge, right? Non-extractive indigenous knowledge. I think, Tony, that's for you.
Yeah, right, okay. Well, I mean, I think from sort of the educational perspective, I'm based in the UK, and we have this whole thing around decolonizing the curriculum, and a lot of people think that's diversifying the curriculum. So you get a whole bunch of texts from obviously non-Western scholars, but still teach things in the exact same way. But obviously that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to sort of change the fundament of how you think about knowledge, of what constitutes knowledge, of erasing the divide between what is considered scientific and then what is considered I mean, based on what's been said to me search, when you're trying to do research in other areas, and who is able to do that research. So I don't think it's necessarily one thing, but I think it's about being self-reflective. So, you know, I've got feminist colleagues, for example, who have done a lot of work with their students on asking them to think whether they should be the ones who do that research, for example. And that's a hard one, because you might be super interested in sort of research in a particular area, but you might actually have to step back because maybe it doesn't need to be researched and maybe it doesn't actually need to be researched by you. But sort of bringing those sorts of conversations in the first place to the classroom, as opposed to some of the conversations we have about ethics and methodology, sort of more generic conversations, I think is really important, and one that I struggle with also with colleagues every day, especially if you spent 25 years of your career sitting in a small village doing cultural anthropology, and someone comes to tell you anthropology is kind of colonial, right? It's really hard to let that go. So it's really hard work, and I don't have any simple answers, but actually having the conversations in the first place, I think, is really important. To the question of Kenya and policing, so when you asked the first part of the question, I was like, yes, that's the answer, burn it all down. But I don't... I think it's good feminist practice not to think in binaries. So in terms of burn it all down, which would be, I would confess, a natural instinct, versus simply reforming, which we know that is not actually enough, because in that sense, you're still sort of sustaining the system. But to maybe sort of think slightly outside of that. And here, I think the work of abolitionist feminists has actually been quite useful. For what purpose is policing? Should be the question, so that we might still have something else, which may even still be called policing, but its configuration is so different from what is known or what shouldn't be completely. And I think that for that to happen, the determination has to be made by Kenyans. Frankly. So I think, my answer to that would be, what are the local societal needs that needs fixing, that requires something, and then start to think about what that something could be, which is very difficult. But then feminist work, I think, is very difficult.
Yes. Thank you so much. Right. You have 5 minutes, as I promised. I will leave 5 minutes towards the end to also ask you a question. We've heard so much from Ernestine herself about the importance of community building and working from indigenous knowledge. We also heard about the importance of using those to reshape the relationship that we have to each other globally. We heard about feminist principle and how hard it is to bring to life, but that is necessary and important. My question to you is, if you were to become part of a community building, what have you learned today? What would you need? It's either what you've learned today that you can put in practice, or what do you still think you need to be that community builder, which is part of the feminist principle. So we are a community here as we sat together for 1 hour. So perhaps what you need, someone else can give you the answer before you leave, so we don't leave empty-handed here. Or that you already know what you've learned from this community that you can put in practice, so we know that we have new community builders out there. I'll give you 1 minute. I'm a little bit like a teacher.
Yeah.
I'll give you 1 minute to think about it. But I would really love it if 1 or 2 people have the courage to say what they've learned and that they can already embody, or what they would like to still get, or what could be helpful before they leave. Yes. I'll come to you. Okay. Introduce yourself and tell us.
I think I had to kill the silence. Yeah, my name is Rita from ACPC. I think that Ernestine's video is very good, and I loved everything about it. I grew up in such a community to understand what she's doing. The next time there should be a video about her, I think it should be very deep to let us know the difficulties, the challenges that she also faces, so that it will give us another picture of the side of the refined video. So that is what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So as a community builder, you also want to know what are the challenges that it comes, like being a community builder is, so you can do a bit. Okay, great, thank you. Anybody else? Ooh, I see a few hands. All right, I'm gonna go there. Yeah?
Thank you very much. My name is Jordi Lassoy from Migration Inc. I myself lead a community-led organization that works on migration issues. And what I would like to say about the solution is I think we need more support from men, but also to lift up each other, to work together. Because women are mothers, sisters, and they know the solution. They are part of the problem, but also part of the solution. So I think we need to work to each other together and also get some support from the politicians, from the NGOs, but also from the communities, so that we can build a platform that's sustainable. That's what I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if you're a man in the room, you heard her. If you are in around her community support, you also heard that. I'm gonna come here.
Thank you very much. My name is Alexandre. I am a cultural anthropology student.
I'm sorry.
But I'm very happy to engage in critical conversations. I would like to come out of this conversation with maybe one more point of concrete examples of local knowledge and local solution that Ernestine did apply, because this panel is called From Local Solutions to Global Impact. And it would be, in my opinion, limiting to present Ernestine's contribution through the COP just as a way to, and very rightfully so, grab money and put it where it needs to be. But also I think it can have some concrete ways to impact. We saw that they sometimes worked with ethnic groups which were different and had different local language and different local economical systems. So maybe if it's too long to talk about it right now, if it will be in the documentary itself, and if you do have time to talk about it, maybe something that's more tangible that I can leave this place with. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy with the rich conversations we're having.
Thank you so much. And I am, unfortunately, it's 3 o'clock, sorry, but I hope everybody keeps their community building spirit going. And to answer your question, actually, about one concrete element, like local solution, is the work that Ernestine does with the honey and the agroforestry. I don't know if you remember partially in the video, she's talking about how they've been dealing with bushfires from, so abandoning, like almost implementing the indigenous way, the way the forest used to be protected. So that's a concrete example of like the impact locally that her work has been doing. So I hope that. And about the documentary is going to be long. We couldn't show you all of it. So I hope somewhere in the documentary there will be this element also. And I would like to thank everybody. Thank you so much for being with us. And I wish you a very good afternoon and enjoy the rest of the day.
Good. Congratulations. Lovely. Yeah. I mean, it must be difficult, though, to be able to edit a short excerpt when you're not done yet. I always find that so impressive because you're still able to tell a story that needed to be told. I always wonder how people did that. Amazing.
It's like being a marathon runner.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hi.
Do you speak Dutch also?
No, sorry.
Yeah, I am also a community. I don't know.
Somebody.
Maybe try to promote.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just kind of
But
curious
I'm also
about
active.
Okay.
Against
how do women end
Great.
up in these centers? Is it like something for people that are
to go back.
displaced, or is it people that just go to
Where are you from?
centers? In Cameroon, yeah.
Actually, no, she works with people. I think there is a lot of.
Okay.
I'm not afraid, but there is a lot of struggle. I already knew because I live long.
Yeah.
Than where I was born.
Yeah.
Okay.
They made me think. I have a lot of info about.
And then my second question, because this is the kind of thing, because I'm just kind of curious, how does this knowledge, how does it kind of fit into all of this? Because I'm assuming in the past, like, people knew how to live. Like you had communities that had kind of their own way of doing things and kind of consuming. So like, is it relearning knowledge, or is it?
So it's basically abandoning. So for example, the introduction
I mean, I think so. In general, I think sort of trying to connect with existing local groups who can provide the platform for you. Like, you know, in some of I'm part of some like African feminist collectives, and we do a lot of webinars. You know, after COVID, the world opened for us. You know, before it used to be like, okay, I have to go to Addis, I have to go to Lagos, but that changes. And you can just, you know, the other day I met with some women from Sudan, and they were saying like one of the gaps is that women in DRC experience the same thing they are, but they don't have a chance to come. We're like, let's just do a webinar. 150 people.
Learning knowledge again from the past, because it's kind
so
of strange.
You choose a topic, look for a local women's group that's doing this. Say, look, I know you're doing FGM stuff, and I want to talk about it because I've got this experience. It's affecting my community. What can you do? And just start small like that. It's no cost. It's just you. There's a bit of distance for now, and it's about sort of growing those networks. I do think one of the things, and I'm probably bad at it, that we don't do enough is engaging with diaspora communities. Like we engage with other Africans in country, but we don't make use of our diaspora communities as much as even because we think, oh, they're not really doing FGM, so maybe I can't get them. No, it doesn't matter. They're diaspora. This is an issue that is affecting all of our communities, and this is where you call coalition building. It doesn't mean that you're doing the exact same things, but on this one issue, you could come together, do a webinar, or maybe the initial webinar or meeting would just be for the Somali folks here in the Netherlands, because they will then have different networks, and then it'll just start that way. But as I said, you know, I mean, sadly, things won't happen as fast as we want it to, right? And it just takes so much time. But I do think you have the right attitude, because you're like, I'm happy to speak. The man, God, the man. I try to be very generous, but the man. And I think you just start like that. Also, like, reach out to whatever. Are you based in Amsterdam? Where are you based in the Netherlands?
2 hours.
Okay. If there's a university by you, look into the politics, sociology, or if they have like an African studies department, and just like email a lecturer, a professor there, being like, look.
No, I'm having contact now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I still have contact, but I kind of want to understand because I am not living there.
Yeah.
And I am long time away from there.
There, yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
In terms of the local, yeah, I get what you mean, but that's, I mean, literally, it's always a concern, right? Because, and I think the fact that you're aware of that is actually a really good thing. So it's just about sort of saying, this is my lived experience. I don't want anybody else to experience that. Are there folks in the diaspora that still have links to groups that are working in that way? You could do your own little bit of research to see like what groups are that way. Can I support in any way? Yeah, it just starts. very low cost, not, nothing much, but thank God for the internet.
Thank you.
So nice to meet you all. Thank you for sharing. Bye. Hi. Hi. Nice to meet you, Tony.
I just wanted to say that I just appreciate it so much. Speech. It was just very refreshing because I just came from different types of conferences. And I just
in the slide.
like my level of frustration.
Oh no. Are you based in Amsterdam or somewhere else? Utrecht. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I just would like to know more also about your work and your contribution.
Oh gosh, I don't have any business cards, but I can tell you my email. Oh, I do have LinkedIn. Yes, Tony Hastrup on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a good first, and then I can give you my email and everything. I changed bags today, which is why I don't have my business card. Yeah, of course.
En want er zit daar iemand in sector start die dan het filmpje staat?
Nee, moet wel vanaf deze.
It's alright. But I'll just give you my name and hopefully it comes back up. But that's what it is. And it's just tony.hastrup@manchester. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Very easy. Yeah. And let me see if I can.
Actually, I don't know why, but I cannot message.
Oh, well, sometimes. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Van de USB-stick is voor je.
Oké, gaan deze dicht. Ja. Dit kan ook dicht. We hebben alleen deze.
I can't spell today.
Het filmpje is na jouw praatje.
Ja.
Nee, ik leid het filmpje als het ware in.
Oké, ja. En dan komt de panelgesprek. Maar Wouter, deze slide die hoeft toch helemaal niet?
Nee,
so there's no dash there. It's just manchester.ac.uk. Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Want dan heb je net het panelgesprek
Yes.
Deze.
Je moet hem verplaatsen.
Eerlijk gezegd, ik zou gewoon persoonlijk alleen slide 1 doen. De rest vertellen we wel. Het leidt ook alleen maar af. Is het filmpje, heb je het al getest?
Ja.
En je ziet allemaal beelden, hè? Dus het is leuk om mijn werk te zien, eigenlijk, de eerste slide.
Ja, prima.
Deze ook waren, deze kan ik wel tussendoor wisselen.
Yeah. We all studied in the system, yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Definitely send me an email. Yeah. We can do a Teams meeting or something like this. Yeah.
Are you staying in Amsterdam?
I'm leaving tomorrow morning, so I'm here for today. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for coming. I mean, it's the same at home, so I can't complain too much. All right. Nice to meet you. I will do. Thanks. Hi. Thank you for your question. Good. Well, we all are, aren't we? Yeah.
Ja, en als filmpje